I never thought I'd design my own ambush, but there I was, sitting on a pristine leather sofa in an apartment my husband had bought with our money, just not for us. The air still carried that sterile new furniture smell, as if every detail had been chosen to impress someone else. I traced my finger along the armrest and wondered how many of my overnight shifts at the hospital had been converted into these polished fixtures, into this secret little love nest. 15 years of marriage reduced to square footage and deception. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had stumbled upon the truth by accident, though the signs had been lining up for months. 3 nights earlier, I was digging through our files trying to locate tax documents. That's when I found them: property records in the name of a hastily formed LLC, payments siphoned from our joint investment account, and a single key labeled office storage. Only it didn't open anything in our office. The math wasn't complicated. My husband Jason had bought another home, not for us, for her. So I did what any reasonable woman does when she discovers her husband's real estate infidelity. I made myself at home in it before he could. At 7:42 p.m., I sat in the living room with the city skyline glowing through floor-to-ceiling windows, sipping his prized 18-year-old Macallan from the kitchen cabinet. The bottle he always said was for special occasions. I decided betrayal counted. I'd already memorized his calendar, a late client dinner allegedly. His client dinners had multiplied like weeds in the last 8 months. Along with his sudden obsession with the gym, his new cologne, his habit of shielding his phone when I walked into the room. Every red flag waved itself in hindsight. Then I heard the elevator ding just outside the apartment door. 2 voices, one male, one female. They were laughing, light-hearted, intimate. My pulse slowed to an eerie calm. "Just wait till you see the view." Jason's voice floated through the door, followed by the metallic click of a key sliding into the lock. The door opened. Hallway light spilled in, framing him with a woman half tucked against his arm. She was petite, maybe early 30s, her beauty polished to effortless perfection, the kind that requires careful effort. His smile was relaxed, carefree, until his gaze snagged on the lamp I clicked on beside me. "Evening, honey," I said softly, raising my glass. "Welcome home. Or should I say, welcome to your other home." The woman froze, eyes wide, her hand slipping from his arm. Jason's face contorted in record speed, from happiness to shock to panic. "Chloe," he stammered, his voice breaking. How did you find the apartment you've been hiding for 6 months?" I stood, refusing to remain the intruder in my own betrayal. "You used our investment account, Jason. Did you really think I wouldn't notice?" The woman's eyes darted between us, her confusion plain. "Jason, what's happening? Who is this?" I extended my hand politely, mockingly. "I'm Chloe, the wife. The first property owner, you might say." "And you are," she faltered. "Megan." "Lovely," I replied. "So you're the reason Jason works all those late nights. Tell me, has he been lying about his job too, or is he just recycling old excuses?" "Chloe, this isn't," he began. "What it looks like," I cut in. "Funny. That's exactly what my mother said when she caught my father with his secretary. Guess betrayal runs in the family." I walked toward the window, gesturing at the luxury around us. Beautiful view, excellent lighting, open concept, all the things I begged for when we were house hunting last year. "Remember when you said we couldn't afford an upgrade? I suppose what you meant was we couldn't afford an upgrade for me." Jason finally moved, trying to steer Megan toward the door, but I stopped him with a sharp tone. "Oh no, please. Stay. You've been living in this apartment I paid for, at least in part. You're as much a part of this conversation as anyone." Her face paled. "You're married, Jason. You told me you were divorced." That broke something in me, not from pain, but from bitter amusement. I laughed. Divorced. That's news to me. I've been making his breakfast, washing his clothes, and sharing his bed for 15 years. Not sure what you'd call that. Megan's gaze softened with something like pity. "I didn't know." "Oh, I believe you," I said. "It's him I don't believe anymore." I walked to the kitchen island where I had arranged my evidence like exhibits at trial property. Documents, bank statements, screenshots of text messages. I pointed at one in particular. "This one's my favorite, where you told her I've been emotionally unavailable since my father died, using my grief as your excuse to cheat." "That's a special kind of cruelty, Jason." The silence stretched heavy and suffocating. Jason looked trapped, a man standing on a landmine. Finally, Megan grabbed her purse with trembling hands. I can't believe this. You told me you were living with your brother, that your ex-wife was bitter trying to take everything. I smirked. Ex-wife bitter, I made him breakfast this morning. Her lips parted in shock. Then she looked at me, woman to woman, and whispered, I'm sorry. I know I answered, and I meant it. But you should probably leave now before you end up a witness to a homicide. She nodded quickly and slipped out the door, leaving Jason and me alone. He sagged, his shoulders collapsing as he reached for the liquor cabinet. I slammed it shut. No. You don't get to numb this. You're going to feel every second. Chloe, please, he tried. We need to talk about this reasonably. Reasonably, I spat. Was it reasonable when you told me we couldn't afford fertility treatments while you were funneling money into this place? Was it reasonable when I put my career on hold for your ambitions? When I stayed through your failures, your depression, your mother's illness? Each word was a knife, and he flinched at every blow. 15 years, Jason, I said, my voice cracking despite my rage. Do you know what hurts most? Not the affair, not even the lies. It's that you let me believe we were building a future when all along you were building an exit strategy. He sank onto a bar stool, dragging his hands through his hair like a man already half defeated. I don't know what happened, he muttered. We got comfortable routine. And then Megan came into the practice. She was younger, interested. She asked questions about me. Not grieving a dead father, I finished for him, my voice cutting. That's what you wanted to say, isn't it? That she was fascinated while I was broken. He flinched but didn't deny it. You stopped looking at me like I mattered. She did. I laughed, bitter and sharp. I've asked about your day every night for 15 years. I've listened to you rant about politics, about colleagues, even about pickle brands. But when I told you I was thinking about going back for my master's, you said, that's nice. 2 nights later, you bragged about how great it was that I was content with my life. Do you even hear yourself? You stopped listening years ago, Jason. He stared at me confused, as though the truth I was laying bare was too heavy for him to carry. When did you start planning this? I asked. The apartment, the secret account, the new life. It wasn't like that, he said, shifting uneasily. It just happened. $500,000 apartments don't just happen, I snapped. Neither do LLCs designed to hide assets. Those require planning, signatures, meetings, lies, multiple deliberate choices. Don't insult me with, it just happened. His composure cracked, frustration surging to the surface. Fine, Chloe. What do you want me to say? That I'm a terrible person? I am. I made mistakes. What I want? I said, my voice like ice, is for you to stop pretending this is something that happened to you instead of something you did. The air between us vibrated, 15 years of partnership collapsing into rubble. You weren't happy either, he shot back. Don't pretend you were. When's the last time you even touched me? Suggested we go out. You've been a ghost in this marriage for years. The words stung not because they were true, but because they carried a grain of truth. Yes, I had withdrawn after my father's death, cocooning myself in grief. But grief is not betrayal. So your solution to my silence was to screw someone else. My voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. To buy her a home with our money, to create a future behind my back instead of having the decency to talk to me. Counseling never crossed your mind, did it? Just deceit. He couldn't answer. His silence screamed louder than any excuse could. The most insulting part, I continued, is that you didn't even have the courage to end our marriage before starting another one. You wanted to keep me as your safety net while you tested out your shiny new life. Was I supposed to fade into the background when you were finally ready to discard me? I never wanted to hurt you, he said weakly. I scoffed. And yet here we are, standing in the physical embodiment of how much you've hurt me. Instinctively, he reached for me, a reflex from years of comfort. I stepped back sharply. Don't. You don't get to touch me ever again. Something shifted in his expression. For the first time, he looked like he realized that some lines once crossed could never be uncrossed. His voice broke when he asked, what happens now? I let the silence stretch before I answered, my lips curling into a cold smile. Now we discuss the terms of your surrender. The next morning, I woke alone in our marital bed. He had spent the night at his brother's house. After I'd told him if he stepped foot in mine again, I'd call the police and report him for theft. Technically, using joint funds wasn't theft, but he didn't know that, and the flash of fear in his eyes had been almost satisfying. I reached for my phone and typed a single text, "It's done. Meeting at 10." Sarah Jenkins replied within minutes. She wasn't just my best friend, she was also one of the most ruthless divorce attorneys in Chicago. They called her the executioner in legal circles. Not to her face, of course. She had offered to take my case pro bono, but I refused. I wanted to pay her full rate. This wasn't charity. This was war. I dressed with purpose, sliding into a cream pantsuit that projected both wounded innocence and undeniable confidence. As I brushed on makeup, I thought about the path that had led me here. When I'd found the property documents, I hadn't confronted Jason immediately. Instead, I'd done what I always do: research. In 3 days, I had built a complete picture of his betrayal. Connor, my old college boyfriend turned banker, had pulled the LLC records for me. The building manager, convinced I was Jason's assistant, had spilled everything about his maintenance requests. A private investigator had delivered photographs of Jason and Megan coming and going from this apartment like clockwork. And my trump card, the post-nuptial agreement I had insisted on 3 years ago. Jason had laughed then, saying fidelity clauses were silly. He signed it anyway. That clause guaranteed that if one of us committed adultery involving financial misconduct, the other received 70% of marital assets plus sole ownership of the primary residence. Jason had forgotten. I hadn't. As I slid the agreement into my bag, I smiled at my reflection in the mirror. The mask of betrayal had been replaced by something sharper, fiercer. By the time I walked into Sarah's office, I wasn't a victim anymore. I was the architect of his undoing. Sarah's office was perched high above the Chicago skyline, the kind of corner suite that exuded authority before she even opened her mouth. She stood as I entered, all sharp lines in a charcoal suit and blood-red heels. Her eyes flicked over me and the faintest smirk tugged at her lips. "You look surprisingly composed for someone whose marriage just exploded," she observed, gesturing for me to sit. "I've been preparing for this longer than you think," I replied, setting my leather folder on her desk. I didn't want to believe I'd need it, but here we are. "Smart girl," she said, flipping open the folder. "Always knew you were the brains in that relationship." She scanned the post-nuptial agreement first, her smile sharpening. "Ah, yes, our little insurance policy. Fidelity clause, 70% assets, sole ownership of the house. He doesn't remember signing this, does he?" "Not a chance," I said. When I mentioned divorce last night, he started babbling about splitting everything 50-50, like it was a generous offer. Sarah barked a laugh. "How noble of him, offering you exactly what the law requires in the absence of a postnup. Men like Jason always think they're the smartest in the room until they're not." She moved on to the LLC paperwork, her expression tightening with professional satisfaction. Joint funds diverted without disclosure. Courts hate that. And with property purchased for the benefit of a mistress, judges really hate that. I slid my phone across the desk. There's more. Every time he claimed he was working late, his location data showed him here. "You tracked his location?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Family sharing," I explained. "He set it up years ago so I'd know when he was heading home." "Ironic, isn't it?" Sarah chuckled darkly. "Deliciously ironic. We'll file immediately adultery financial misconduct. I'll request an emergency freeze on all assets, especially the apartment and the LLC. Meanwhile, keep documenting everything. Every transfer, every late-night excuse." She leaned back in her chair, studying me with something between pride and calculation. "Do you want the house or do we sell?" I pictured our 4-bedroom home, the garden I'd cultivated, the rooms filled with both memories and poison. "I want to keep it," I said finally. "Not forever, but long enough that every time he drives past he remembers it's not his anymore." Her grin was wolfish. "That's my girl." For the next hour, we strategized like generals at war. She promised me forensic accountants' depositions, subpoenas, every weapon in her arsenal. As we wrapped up, her tone softened just slightly. "One last thing," she said. "He's going to try to crawl back. They always do. Begging, promises, tears. Are you ready for that?" I thought of the nights I'd spent waiting at the window, the fertility treatments he'd dismissed as too expensive, the meals I'd cooked while he was here in this other apartment. I thought of 15 years poured into a man who had built a secret escape route instead of a partnership. "I was prepared to spend my life with him," I said quietly. "Now I'm prepared to spend it without him. There is no third option." Sarah nodded once, a warrior's acknowledgement. "Then let's make sure you get every penny you deserve." By the time I left her office, the winter air outside felt less biting. My phone buzzed with a new message. Please come home, we need to talk. I can explain everything. I typed my reply without hesitation. I'm not the one who needs a new home. 3 weeks later, I stood in the kitchen, my kitchen now, thanks to a temporary court order, listening to his voicemail. Chloe, please. The bank froze the practice accounts. I can't access anything. My attorney says this postnup might not even be enforceable. We need to talk directly, work something out. I deleted the message without a flicker of hesitation and returned to chopping vegetables for one. The silence of the house was no longer suffocating, it was cleansing. The emergency hearing had gone exactly as Sarah predicted. The judge reviewed evidence of financial misconduct, not just the apartment, but nearly $200,000 Jason had quietly diverted from his medical practice. The ruling came swift and merciless freeze on assets exclusive use of the house to me mortgage and utilities to remain his responsibility. The look on his face when the gavel came down was worth every cent of Sarah's retainer. And then came the call I hadn't expected, not from Jason but from Megan. I hesitated before answering, but curiosity won. Hello? Her voice was tight, shaken. Chloe, I thought you should know something. Jason came to see me yesterday. He begged me to testify that there was nothing between us until after you two were separated. I let out a bitter laugh. Of course he did. And what did you say? I told him to go to hell, she said, a new steel in her voice. Then after a pause, she added, I also told him I'm pregnant. The knife slipped from my hand, clattering onto the counter. You're what? 11 weeks. I wasn't going to tell him. But when he tried to make me lie for him, I couldn't hold it in anymore. My stomach dropped. Years of fertility treatments denied, dismissed, shelved, and now this. The room spun slightly as I gripped the edge of the counter, steadying myself against the weight of her words. Jason had spent years telling me it wasn't the right time, that the market was unstable, that fertility treatments were too costly. And now with this woman he'd known for barely half a year, he had what he'd always denied me. I'm sorry, Megan's voice softened on the line. I know this must be painful to hear, but I thought you deserved to know from me, not as some bombshell in court. I closed my eyes, forcing my voice steady. Thank you for telling me. What are you going to do? She asked timidly. What I've already started, I said flatly. I'm keeping the baby, she said firmly, and I'll be filing for child support. I don't want him back. God, no. But this child deserves financial stability. An unexpected laugh bubbled up in me, sharp and bitter. You might want to get in line, Megan. There won't be much left after the divorce. Silence stretched for a moment. Then her voice dropped lower. Would you meet me? There's something else you should know. That's how I found myself the next afternoon in a quiet corner cafe, sitting across from my husband's pregnant mistress. Megan looked different without the armor of lipstick and carefully chosen dresses. She seemed smaller, somehow more human. Her eyes darted nervously before she pushed a manila envelope across the table. I started wondering what else he might have lied about, she explained. So I did some digging, and it turns out your husband has a pattern. My fingers slid over the envelope before opening it. Inside were printed emails, screenshots of dating app conversations, messages on social media, different names, different faces, 4 other women at least, and one Rebecca, a pharmaceutical rep he'd been seeing on and off for 3 years. I sifted through the papers with strangely steady hands. My heart didn't break this time, it calcified. Why are you giving me this? I asked. Megan's hand hovered protectively over her flat stomach. Because he wanted me to lie for him. Because he painted you as cold, unloving, and I see now that's not true. And because I want my child to know I did the right thing, even when it was hard. Her words lodged somewhere deep inside me. I searched her face for manipulation, for agenda, but all I saw was weary sincerity. Thank you, I said at last. There's more, she added hesitantly. He told me he's planning to claim the practice is failing, that he'll need to declare bankruptcy to avoid giving you too much. But I've seen the books. It's doing better than ever. He's hiding income. A slow smile curved across my lips that I murmured is very interesting information. 2 days later, Sarah was hunched over Megan's envelope in her office, her eyes gleaming like a predator spotting easy prey. Multiple affairs spanning years, concealed assets, planned perjury about his practice's value. With this, we won't just win Chloe, we'll annihilate him. What's our next step? I asked. We bring in a forensic accountant. We depose the other women. And she said, lips curling, we invite Megan to testify on our side. The thought of walking into court flanked by my husband's pregnant mistress might have once made me sick. Now it felt like justice. The confrontation came sooner than expected. Jason appeared unannounced on my doorstep one evening. His normally immaculate appearance rumpled his eyes, red-rimmed with exhaustion. You have to stop this, Chloe, he begged when I cracked the door open. The practice won't survive an audit. Everything I've built will collapse. I leaned against the frame, blocking his entry. You shouldn't have built it on lies. I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, he said, his voice cracking. But this vendetta will destroy both of us financially. Don't you remember the good years? Don't 15 years mean anything? I studied the man I once thought I'd grow old with, searching for traces of the person I had loved. All I saw was a stranger. They meant everything to me, Jason. That's why your betrayal can't be forgiven. He blurted suddenly, Megan's pregnant. I know, I replied coolly. She told me herself right before she showed me evidence of your other affairs. The blood drained from his face. What? Rebecca? Eliza? Sophia? Lauren? I listed the names one by one like blows from a hammer. Did you think Megan was the only one who mattered, that she'd keep your secrets forever? He staggered back, visibly shaken. Chloe, those were— Save it, I cut him off. Your deposition is next week, under oath. Think carefully about whether you want to add perjury to your collection of terrible choices. Before he could speak, a car pulled into the driveway. Sarah stepped out with a man carrying photography equipment. I straightened, smiling coldly. Perfect timing. The appraiser is here to catalog every asset in this house. The wedding china, the artwork, the furniture you claimed we couldn't afford. We're documenting it all. Jason watched helplessly as they approached. This isn't you, Chloe. This cold, calculating woman, it's not who you are. I met his gaze with steel. You're right. It's who you made me. And then I stepped aside, letting Sarah in, shutting the door on the life I'd once imagined and the man who had destroyed it. He left that night without another word. His shoulders hunched, his gait uneven, as if the weight of everything he had built and destroyed was finally pressing down on him. For the first time since discovering the apartment, I felt no rush of vindication in watching him crumble. Only a strange, quiet certainty that justice was moving forward and nothing could stop it now. 6 months later, I stood in the hushed gallery of the Art Institute of Chicago, directing the installation of a newly restored Monet. My hands adjusted the angle of the lighting while a team of conservators moved with careful precision around me. This job, this second chance at the career I'd once abandoned for Jason, was now mine. And it was more fulfilling than I ever remembered. The divorce had been finalized 3 weeks earlier. In the end, Jason hadn't fought. Faced with Megan's testimony, the forensic accountant's damning report, and a mountain of evidence of affairs and financial deceit, he folded completely. The court awarded me 75% of our marital assets, full ownership of the house, and alimony that would taper as I rebuilt my career. Jason kept his practice, but the forensic audit had uncovered enough impropriety to spark an IRS investigation. He was free, yes, but far from unscathed. The West Village apartment was sold. I never stepped foot in it again after that first night. Some spaces don't deserve a second glance. Megan gave birth to a daughter 2 months ago. We maintained a cautious, fragile sort of friendship linked not by love, but by shared betrayal. She sent me photos sometimes. A tiny hand, a wrinkled smile, a tuft of dark hair. Jason sent checks, but his emotional distance remained as consistent as it had with me. Some patterns, I realized, don't change. One evening, as I adjusted the lighting on the Monet, I felt a familiar presence behind me. I turned and found Connor, my college boyfriend, now the banking executive, who had helped me trace Jason's deception. His crooked smile hadn't changed. The rumors are true, he said, glancing at the painting. You got the restoration job. 6 months now, I replied, surprised but not unsettled. What brings you here? Business lunch nearby, he said with a shrug. Then softer. But really, I wanted to see if you might want to grab coffee sometime. I studied him, the boy I once loved, layered under the man standing in front of me. Coffee, I repeated thoughtfully. Maybe. He held my gaze steady and warm. No rush. I'll be here if you want to. That night I declined Sarah's invitation for celebratory drinks and instead wandered Millennium Park alone. Near the reflective surface of the bean, I saw a young couple arguing, the woman wiping away tears while the man gestured defensively. For a moment I saw myself in her years ago, smoothing over red flags, painting white over crimson warnings. I almost stepped forward to tell her what I had learned, that compromise cannot fix betrayal, that love without respect is hollow. But I didn't. Their path was theirs to walk. Back in my new apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, I poured a glass of wine and opened my laptop to study conservation techniques. The work absorbed me, filled me, nourished me in a way Jason never could. I was smiling without realizing it, not from giddiness, but from something deeper, the satisfaction of autonomy reclaimed. The buzzer startled me. A package awaited downstairs with no return address. Inside, wrapped carefully, was a glass paperweight encasing a delicate water lily eerily similar to the Monet I had been restoring. A note was tucked inside. To new beginnings when you're ready. No rush. See. I set it on the windowsill where the morning sun would strike it. Not a commitment. Not even a promise. Just a possibility waiting patiently. That night, standing on my balcony, the lake rippling silver under the moonlight, I whispered aloud to no one but myself, to new beginnings. I had not just survived Jason's betrayal. I had transcended it. The woman who once waited in a leather chair for her husband's lies to walk through the door was gone. In her place stood someone new, a woman who had learned the most sacred vows are not the ones we make to others, but the promises we keep to ourselves. If my story resonates with you, if you've ever felt broken and wondered if you could rise again, please share this video, like it, and subscribe, and leave a comment below. I want to hear your stories, your strength, your survival. Because we are not defined by those who betray us, but by the way we rebuild.